Okay, today we're going to start on test summit Bais. We start from the 2 dots, 9b. I'm Rabbi Ben Eily. Famous Rabbi Ben Eily. Remember? Vote to the creations from the shame of the Torah.
Isn't he famous
Every
that
day.
he went up to heaven like Eily?
He says that a Baskel comes out every day and says, woe to the creations from the shame of the Torah. It's the embarrassment of the Torah. If not for the Torah, then the heavens and the earth wouldn't exist. So, and Rabbi said that he went up to heaven alive, that is. Rabbi Ben Eily. Rabbi Ben Eily says, Hekdesh Rishon Meisef Chaimish Vein Hekdesh Sheni Meisef Chaimish. So far it's easy. It says that if someone redeems is something that he sanctified, that he consecrated, if he redeems it himself, so he adds a fifth onto the redemption price. However, let's say the new thing that it got redeemed onto, because it's not a Tamurah, but it's a redemption. But if he wants to redeem the second one, he doesn't add a chaimish onto that, onto the new one. It's only the first one. Amrav Papa, my time with
talking about redeeming. We're discussing redeeming it from the Bais Hamikdash.
Yeah.
Not swapping in his own yard.
Or he has his own thing which he's able to. But we don't want to call it swapping because that sounds like Tamurah.
Right.
But it's a redemption, which that is allowed. For example, it gets a mum, and he can't bring it as a sacrifice, so he puts the kedusha onto another animal, and he says this is going to be in place of
before bringing it to
the temple. But it's already consecrated.
Just by designation on his part.
Yeah. So Amar Rav Papa, my time with Rabbi Ben Levi, Rav Papa. We jump many generations here. Yeah, we jump to the end. Rav Papa says, what's the source for this? Amakravim hamakdish yigala space of Yosef Chamishas. If the one that sanctifies will redeem his household, he'll add a fifth. In other words, if he sanctifies his house or his possessions. And when he redeems it, he adds a fifth. But the emphasis here is hamakdish, the one that consecrates, that sanctifies. V'loi hamatfis. The term matfis means someone that grasps something else that's holy, and he says that my other mundane thing should be like this that's holy.
Ooh.
So he's like stretching over holiness from one thing onto another thing. So only a makdish. But if he is redeeming it and then putting it out, stretching it over to something else, he's matfis it onto something else, that you're not Meisef Chaimish. Okay, so there's a biblical source. Boy Rabbafen. Okay, now here we go. We jump back into yesterday's questioning from Rabbafen. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here it goes. Hifresh Hashem leskaper by. Let's say someone requires a guilt offering, and he designates it. V'humam, and it gets a mum. So if it gets a mum, so that's here. He takes the.
Somebody has Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm trying to call him.
Good.
You're such a
I'm adding in some words over here based on the test. He takes the holiness and he puts it on another animal. Okay, now when he does that, he has to add a fifth because he consecrated it. If you're missing words, I'm reading it a little different based on tests in the Shita Mikubetzes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
V'neskaper.
sounded very similar to Yomi.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, there's one slight difference, which I'll explain in a second. V'neskaper, and he gets it, you have to say, V'neskaper b'shamacher, and it gets atonement from even a third one. V'nitik zeh la'olah, and the one that, what it didn't explain was that we lost the second one. So he then offers a third one. Then the second one resurfaces, reappears. And so now, what do you do with the second one? Atonement was already received, so the second one that was lost, that was supposed to be that gets that turns into an Eily, which is a gift offering in the temple. The question is now, let's say you redeem the Eily because it got a mum, and you want to bring a different one as an Eily. So do you add a fifth to the second one? We learned that you don't add a fifth to the replacement, right? So here, is this considered a replacement? Well, there's two issues here. First of all, it's a different carbon. And second of all, it's a replacement for the second sacrifice. Amar Abaya. So Abaya comes in, he says, Maika mi baile. What is he asking? You see, Rabbi Yirmiyah's questions, when you look at them, they get to the fundamental point of what is this all about. That's like really Rabbi Yirmiyah's question. When you think about his question, you get that Rabbavin's question is because he's joining two questions together, so it's unclear. But that's why Abai is coming in. He's saying, Rabbavin, what is actually your question? What Abai is doing to Rabbavin is what Rabbi Yirmiyah would do to us in other cases. He's like, which question is your main question? Like, what's your main point here? That's it. Okay. So Abaya says, Maikumi Baile, what is Rabbavin asking? If he's asking when you have two different animals but one kedusha, so tibayle b'lein eskaper, then why does he have to throw into this that he had reached atonement from a different animal and then the other one became an Eily? Just say it got a mum, and I have a new animal here. He doesn't have to get atonement from a third animal. Ishnei kedushas v'guf echad. If you want to tell me that it's two different sacrifices, an asham and an Eily, v'guf echad, so kami baile. If that's his question, so tibayle b'lo humam. Then I don't need to replace the first asham because it got a mum with another asham. Just say that I lost it and I replaced it with an Eily, and then I found it. And I lost it. I brought another one, then I found it, and it becomes an Eily, and then I have two kedushas with the same animal.
Basically, they're asking, why did he have to go three?
Why did he have to go three?
Could have gone two levels and have the same question without going three levels.
Right.
We had a similar case.
Exactly.
Like some where he designated it, he lost it, and then he found it again. And what happens to the one he found?
Just last page we have this question.
Right, this question.
Same exact.
The Gemara answers the same way we answered yesterday. Rabbavin Chadam Migoy Chadakam Iboyle is asking two questions. There was an original, and then there was a follow-up. If you say that there's two different animals that are both asham, you say that you don't have to do an extra chaimesh because in this sanctity you've already added a chaimesh once. So what about shnei gufim v'shtei kedushas mai? What if you have two animals and two different sacrifices? Okay. According to this version, we jumped from one of the two possibilities to a combination of both. That's what we're doing. The Gemara says take Lishna Achrina, there's another version. In the second version, we're going to jump from one of the two possibilities to the other one of the two possibilities. We don't immediately jump into the combination of both. So it goes like this. Bay Rabavin, Hifrish Hashem Leskaper Bay. This gets extremely complicated to read. It's the concept is okay, but the reading, because it's Echad and Acher and the commentaries are throwing you into different text variants in the text. It's very complex over here. Someone separates a asham for an atonement, v'humam, and it gets a mum. V'chillay al acher, so far so good. And he takes the sanctity off this one and puts it on another one. V'haisif chaimesh, and he adds a fifth. Niskapru b'asham acher, but he loses it, so he has to bring another asham. V'nitik zel Eily. Now the second asham, the middle one here, is now left over, so that becomes an Eily.
So the first part is just two levels of the Lishna Achrina.
Well, the Lishna Achrina starts exactly the same. It starts the same. Okay. Where you have the first animal with the mum, the replacement animal gets lost. We get a third animal here. That gets brought. The second animal resurfaces. It's now an Eily. So we already paid a chaymesh for the first animal when we redeemed it to get it onto the second one. So Ma'osh Yosef Alav Chaymesh, what do you do? Do you add a chaymesh onto the Eily? Which is
which one is the Zeh?
The middle animal.
The second.
The one with that was replacing the mum, the second animal.
Okay.
Why is that nitik Eily? Because I have a third animal that was brought I lost it.
This one was lost.
Okay. So
what's the difference in the question?
In the question, it's the same. In the question, it's the same. It's the Amar Abaya that's different. Amar Abaya, I beg you, this is what he's asking. If he's asking if there's a new holiness onto the same body, which means now it's an Eily, used to be an Asham. So, if that's the case, then I don't need the original problem over here is the animal got a mum, and then I don't need that. If I want to say that I have to read this as iguf acher ba'isa kedusha. If it's a different body, right? If it's a different body, do you have acher over there? Iguf acher, yeah. Yours is easier. Mine doesn't even say that. Mine just says guf echad. If it's a different body but the same kedusha, that means it just got a mum. Different body, but it went from asham to asham, right? Same kedusha. So, that's what Ma'osh Yosef Alav Chaymesh, and that's our question. Do you have to add a Chaymesh on the new one? Our question is Miyamrin Basham Kamahu de Maisif Aval Beguf Acher Afagav the Kohen Bekedusha Ein Maisif Chaymesh. Do we say that only on the first one but not on the second one? Dilma Kolei Sekdusha Ein Maisif Chaymesh. Or do we say that no? I'm on top of the page now. All if it's the same holiness, even though it's a new animal, you don't add a chaymesh. V'im tim telaymar hadein guf acher. Kiven deisa kedusha koi eina meisiv chaymesh. If you say that you don't have to add a chaymesh because it's the same holiness, ela neskaper beyacher v'nitik zelay lamahu. But what about if it's a different holiness? Why? Because you lost it, and now it turned into an Eily. So ki ma'asav chaymesh b'isa guf b'isa kedusha. When it's supposed to be ki eina ma'asav chaymesh. When don't you add it's a chaymesh as if it's with the same animal with the same holiness? Aval b'kedusha acheres loy. But if it becomes a different holiness, no. Then you do add a chaymesh. Eidel makiven da'isa gufu ma'asav chaymesh. Or maybe because it's the same body, it's supposed to be eina ma'asav chaymesh. Okay, so you got the question.
I saw that. I was like, whoa.
Okay, so
literally the opposite.
It's crazy how to read this. So, okay. Teku. Marley says a question. What's the not how to read it? That we can. It's just one way or the other. But the question is instead of do we say that if it's the same kedusha, I don't have to add a chaymesh, but maybe if it's a different kedusha, even if it's the same body, I do have to add a chaymesh. Now, that question wasn't asked in the first lishna. The first lishna was if it's the same holiness, I don't have to add a chaymesh because it's the but what about if it's a different body? If it's a different body in the same holiness, I don't have to add a chaymesh. But let's say it's a different body and a different kedusha. I do have to add. The first question, my second question, in the first version of this, my second question, I did the combination of both already. Over here, I just go from one variant to the other. One holiness with the different animals. Now I go to two holinesses with one animal. That's the difference in it.
This every time it says Lishna China, is that Yerushalmi or is that V'yar?
We had that once, that where Rashi told us it was Yerushalmi. I don't know. In Tamurah we're having this often. Lishna China.
It's Tamurah.
Interesting. you want to remember which Masech there's a lot of Lishna Achronis.
We have a whole Yerushalmi in the other room. We should just take it and see if that's the way they know.
It becomes very interesting when you do that because it doesn't always match up perfectly. I've done that, and it's interesting that the way we would read the Yerushalmi, I don't know if this is an example of that, but the way we would read the Yerushalmi, we would see questions different than the way the Bavli understands what we have in the. It becomes very interesting. Okay. Boy Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama has a question. You remember Rami Bar Chama? He's a brother-in-law of Rava. I don't even think you call that a brother-in-law. Rami Bar Chama married the same wife as Rava, but he passed away. And then Rava married. That's not a brother-in-law. That's anyway. Okay, you see that? It's the son-in-law of Rav Chesed. Okay. Bayram Bar Chama Makdish Meisav Chaimish. Oy Mechaper Meisav Chaimish. Miskaper it's supposed to be. How does this, what's happening here? Yeah, same moment. There's actually a Maruk Bar Chama that I think married a sister. To one of the. So, here we're saying, if someone designates an animal for another person, now the owner has to, if he has to redeem it, for whatever reason, karamuamers, so he needs to redeem that animal and replace it for a different one. So who's the owner? We know that the owner has to add an extra fifth. Someone that's not an owner doesn't have to add the fifth. So here there's sort of two owners, because one gave the consecrated animal to another person for his atonement. So is the owner the one that's being atoned for? Is the owner the one that gave it? It's a very good question. It's an inquiry. Amar Rava, Amar Kra, Rava says, here's the answer. You see Rava and Rami Bar Chama discussing. Vima Makdish, Yigal Espese. Sorry?
Rava is the one who, Rava is the one
came after. If the Makdish redeems his house, Makdish v'lei miskaper, the one that designates it and not the one that it's atoning for. The owner is not the one that's the recipient of it, of this atonement. The owner is the one that actually donated this animal for him. Boy Rami Bar Chama. Now Rami Bar Chama has another question. Makdish oiset Tamurah miskaper oiset Tamurah. We said also that only the owner can do Tamurah. Who's the owner? The one that gave the animal, or the one that's the recipient of the atonement? Rava says in Cain. What's the hay over here? Shita. Rava says he adds the Shita. It's obvious the miskaper oiset Tamurah, that the one that receives the atonement can do the Tamurah. He's considered the owner. The imakdish oiset Tamurah in Cain, because if the one that designates it can do Tamurah, so matzinu tzibur v'shutfim oiset Tamurah. We learned that a congregation, a community offering cannot, you can't have Tamurah on a community offering. So, let's say the community wants to designate a certain animal, so they tell a guy, you go and designate the animal. Now, if the one that designates the animal is able to do Tamurah, then we find a community offering.
Is he?
And he's not able to, because we have a Mishnah that says that the community offering you can't do Tamurah. So what does this mean? That it's the one that gets the atonement that's the owner in the for Tamurah. When it comes to adding the fifth, it's the one that consecrates it. That he's the owner. When it comes to doing Tamurah, we have a different owner.
So Shutfin can't do Tamurah.
No.
So who does Tamurah?
That was Machlekes.
Matzino Sivu or Shutfin?
No, Matzino, it's going to come out, is that Shutfim are going to be able to do Tamurah if they designate one person. Obviously it can't, and it goes on the person that's getting the atonement and not the one that's consecrating it. Vaid, and another issue, the Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Huna, it's usually Rabbi Bar Rav Huna, who's the Vav? Oh, he says Amar Li Huna. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Li Huna. Interesting. Tana, Karbonai Lashem al Nizrei. There's a
The
Nazir brings a sacrifice, and then the pasuk goes on and it says, "Milvada shetasig yadei," besides for what he can afford. The Gemara says, 1 second. That term of heseg yad is usually used on a carbon. It's called the carbon oil of Yerid. Depends how much he can afford. If he can afford more, he gives an animal. Less, he brings the birds or the flour. So v'chi nazir nidin b'heseg yad. Is this the carbon of the nazir? And the nazir brings a regular carbon. He doesn't have that option of his what's the tax? What's it called? Brackets. That doesn't go in those brackets. Okay, so how does this work? Karbanei l'Hashem al nizrei shehifrish mishaloi. It's a carbon to Hashem for a nazir that if the nazir gave it himself. But the same halacha will apply if someone else donated the nazir for him. Okay, maybe he couldn't afford it. Someone else would give it for him. The Gemara says, why is that relevant? If someone else brings it, well, whoever it is, what's the difference? He brought a carbon. Eily if you want to tell me that he can receive atonement and someone else brings a carbon for him. So pshita, the mechaperle. That's obvious. That someone else can bring an atonement for him and it will work. Gemara says, no, Eily Tamurah. It's talking about Tamurah. Talking about exchange. V'achi kamar. Afkish, and this is what it's telling me. Afkish, Tamurah. Even if other people donate the carbon for him, nevertheless, he's the one that does the Tamurah. Shmamina basar miskaper oslinan. You see that you follow the one that's miskaper, the one that's receiving the atonement. When it comes to Tamurah, he's the one that's able to do this. The Gemara says, like, it's not true. It's not so. You thought you had this all worked out. It's not necessarily so. You missed one fine point. It says, actually, lenient kapara. It's coming to tell me that if someone else offers a sacrifice, he still gets an atonement. We thought that was obvious. That someone else can donate the sacrifice and you bring it. We asked, so what? Someone gave him a present. What's the big deal? He'll get an atonement. It says, If the Torah didn't tell me, if the Eberster didn't say, besides for what he can afford, we would have thought that the atonement comes from his money. Kamash Malan comes to tell us that no, you can get atonement even if it's not from his money.
Every korban you would have to have milvada.
That's a good question.
Just doing it on Nazir.
That's a good question. Someone's got to ask that. That's a very good question. It's a good point. That's a very good point. I'll just tell you. I don't have an answer, but I'll just tell you. I learned by Rabbi Shachat, the Rosh, that he explained once. He says that when it comes to Shabbos, the Gemara says, "Asay Shabbat chachol v'al tistarich lebrios." If you can't afford the extra food for Shabbos, so make your Shabbos a weekday, and don't come on to having to ask other people for funds to make Shabbos special. You have sardines on Shabbos. That's good. So he explained it. He says, because the mitzvah of spending money on Shabbos is to spend your own money, not to spend someone else's money. So that's the way he explained. Anyway, we would have understood this by the Nazir would have thought that the atonement or whatever the way of for the Nazir is that he has to do it with his own money. For someone else to come in and to give him money, so he didn't perform that atonement, whatever he needs. And then the pasuk says that no, we still could. That still works. Okay, so the Gemara now asks, "My havi Allah." What happens with Tamurah?
But they don't accept the first one.
Oh, so 1 second. Okay.
So this one was deflected. It says.
They're not accepting the first one. That's what they're quoting from Taisus. Okay. Tashima, so come and listen. We'll see. The Amar Rabbi Vo. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Remember Rabbi Vo? We're in Eretz Yisrael now. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, he says, Makdish, Meisef, Chaimish, and Meskaparis Tamurah. He just sets it up very clearly. When it comes to the Chaimish, that's the one that consecrates it. When it comes to the Tamurah, that's the one that's receiving the atonement. If someone takes truma from his own grain for someone else's grain, the one that separates the truma has the right to give it to whoever he wants, not the one that's the recipient of the effects of truma. Let's say, 1 second, that's truma for me. You think truma for me? That should go to my brother-in-law. I made up with him that, if you're going to do me the favor, do it my way. That's not how it works. My timer, Amar Kras Kol Meiser Tvoscha V'Nasata. It says the Meiser of your grain, and you will give. So it's the one that's giving it that has the rights. Okay. Ein Memirin. You can't do Tamurah. Not just that you're not allowed to, but you're not able to do Tamurah. Lo ye'ivarin be'ubrin. If I have limbs of a chulin animal, I can't say that the limbs of this chulin animal should replace the fetus of that carbon. Maybe you could consider it the same size. I mean, these limbs should take the sanctity of that. If it would, by the way, if the limbs of this animal would take the sanctity would probably spread to the whole animal. We're saying that it doesn't work anyway. But and I can't do the same the other way. I can't say that the fetus of this chulin animal should replace the sanctity of the limbs of a carbon.
When would you be in a situation where you're donating limbs to the Bais Hamikdash?
Well,
leg.
Yeah, event Pekua.
But it's leg. Leg for leg.
Right.
And when would you be in a situation where you're donating a fetus?
The only thing is, I can imagine someone saying, "I want to give to the temple something, but I want to retain something for myself." So he would probably do that and think like, "Oh well, I'll give most of the animal, but not that limb. That limb I really wanted." There's something like that.
But you can't do that. That's not an option.
Right. And we're saying that it doesn't work anyway.
You can't donate a cow missing a leg. You have to donate the whole cow.
Right.
Donate the value.
So we do have halachas like that.
Donate the value.
Right. So there is
what happens.
I'm pledging myself to give a fetus, and then he switches and decides I'm going to give bones. But in practical, no one donate. You can't donate a fetus to the Bais Hamikdash.
Well, you'll see in the Gemara. You can't take the fetus and some of the limbs of chulin and say that should replace a carbon, a tamura, do tamura of a full carbon. And don't take a full animal for limbs and a fetus. Rabbi Yosi says, you can exchange chulin limbs for a complete animal. Not you're allowed, but you're able to. But you can't take a chulin animal, a complete chulin animal, and exchange that for limbs of a carbon. Rabbi Yosi holds that partial animals do not have enough sanctity to spread the kedusha over to anything else. However, partial animals of chulin can be the recipients of a full animal of
We just spent countless time discussing kabbanas that have a mum. So obviously, if you can't bring a whole cover of the mum, you can't bring 3 limbs.
That's right. What's going to happen is the whole animal is going to become kodesh. That's what's going to happen. The kedusha is going to spread to the whole animal. Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi says, when it comes to sanctifying something, if someone sanctifies just the leg, the whole animal becomes holy.
I thought it was only if it was something that the nefesh was negain.
Where did we say that? Where did that come in? Yeah, that we did by Yerachim. Here he's coming just be makdish an animal.
If he says any part of the animal, the whole animal is makdish, or only a limb, a total limb?
I'm not sure. So therefore, then the whole animal should become Tamurah. The same thing, just like the original, you can, if you designate just one limb, the whole animal becomes. So too, if you exchange from a full carbon over onto a limb, the whole animal should become consecrated. The whole new chulin animal. Itmar was taught. Machlekes here between Bar Pada and Rabbi Yochanan. I don't know exactly where Bar Pada is. I assume he's somewhere around Rabbi Yochanan's generation. Bar Pada says, "Ein kedusha chala al ubrin." Now we're talking about someone has an animal that's pregnant, and the person consecrates just the fetus. So Bar Pada says it's not consecrated, and when you bring this to the temple without consecrating it, you're bringing a mundane animal chulin ba'azara, which is a prohibition, because the consecration didn't work. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kedusha Chal Al Ubrin, it's not so. He says the Kedusha is Chal, does take effect